The Great Hall of the Concord of 12 stretched for nearly a mile. Its walls were made of living crystal that changed color with the mood of those inside. Today, the crystal glowed a dull orange. The mood was boredom. Ambassador Veloth of the Sonari stood at her designated platform. Her green scales caught the light as she shifted her weight from one leg to another. She had been standing here for 6 hours, listening to reports about mining rights and trade disputes. The galaxy was vast, but its politics were small. Next item, announced the speaker, a massive creature from the hollow worlds whose voice sounded like grinding stone. Sector 774, the Sol System, routine survey update. Veloth's ears perked up. Sol. She knew that name from her studies long ago. A holographic display appeared in the center of the hall. It showed a small yellow star with 8 planets orbiting around it. The third planet was blue and green. Beautiful, really. But the data scrolling beside it told a strange story. Sol System remains classified as a dead zone. The speaker continued. Population detected on the third planet, designated Earth. Approximately 7 billion life forms. Technology level 0, 0? Asked Lord Kryn of the Drath hegemony. He was a tall being covered in black armor that seemed to grow from his very skin. His people were warriors, conquerors. They had taken 30 systems in the last century alone. How can 7 billion beings have 0 technology? Unknown, the speaker replied. Survey drones detect no electronic signals, no spacecraft, no orbital structures, no energy signatures beyond natural phenomena. The species appears to have returned to a primitive state. Returned, Veloth spoke up. Several ambassadors turned to look at her with surprise. The Sonari were known for their silence in these meetings. You said returned. That means they once had technology. The speaker made a sound that might have been annoyance. Ancient records indicate the Sol species achieved basic space travel. Approximately 14,000 standard years ago, they launched primitive vessels. They sent radio signals into space. Then, nothing. They went silent and have remained silent ever since. 14,000 years, Lord Kryn said slowly. A cruel smile spread across his face. That is a long time to hide in the dark. Veloth felt a chill run down her spine. She did not like the way Kryn was looking at that little blue planet. The Sol System holds no strategic value, the speaker declared. It sits at the edge of explored space. The matter is closed. Moving on to, I claim it. Every being in the hall turned to face Lord Kryn. He had stepped forward, his armored boots clicking against the crystal floor. The Drath hegemony claims the Sol System, he repeated. Under Concord law, any unclaimed system with no spacefaring civilization may be annexed. Earth has no spacefaring civilization. Therefore, it is ours. There are 7 billion living beings on that planet. Veloth protested. You cannot simply claim them like property. I can, and I have. Kryn turned his cold eyes toward her. The law is clear, Ambassador. Do your people wish to challenge this claim? Do the Sonari wish to go to war with the hegemony over a planet of primitives? Veloth said. Nothing. She could not. The Sonari were scholars and diplomats, not warriors. They would not survive a week against the Drath war machine. I thought not. Kryn turned back to the speaker. The matter is settled. I will dispatch a colonization fleet immediately. Earth will become a Drath holding within the month. The crystal walls pulsed a sickly yellow. No one objected. No one ever objected to the Drath, as the council moved on to other business. Veloth quietly left the hall. She needed to find someone. A young historian who had been bothering her for months with strange theories about Earth. She found Kale in the archives, surrounded by floating displays of ancient data. He was young for a Sonari, his scales still bright green, his eyes still full of wonder at the universe. That wonder would fade with time. It always did. Ambassador. Kale jumped to his feet when he saw her. I did not expect. The Drath have claimed Earth. Veloth interrupted. They are sending a fleet. Kel's face went pale. No, they cannot. Ambassador, I have been researching the Sol System for 3 years. Something is wrong with the official story. What do you mean? Kale waved his hand, and the displays around him rearranged them. Selves, they showed ancient records, some so old they were barely readable. 14,000 years ago, humanity was making rapid progress. They had nuclear power. They had computers. They were building their first space stations. They were noisy, ambitious. Everywhere at once, Cale pointed to a graph showing radio signals. And then, in the span of a single decade, they went completely silent. No more signals. No more spacecraft. Nothing. They destroyed themselves, Velith said. It happens. Young species often do. But they did not die. Cale brought up another display. Look, 7 billion of them are still alive. Their planet is still green. Their oceans are still blue. There's no sign of nuclear war, no sign of plague, no sign of any catastrophe. They simply stopped talking to the stars. Velith stared at the data. Cale was right. It made no sense. What are you suggesting? She asked. I am suggesting that humanity did not lose their technology. I am suggesting they hid it. On purpose. Cale's voice dropped to a whisper. Ambassador, what if they are still out there? What if 14,000 years of silence was not death, but preparation? Velith wanted to dismiss the idea as fantasy, but something in her gut told her that Cale was onto something important. Can you prove any of this? No, Cale admitted. The records are incomplete. But Ambassador, I have found references to something called the Long Watch. It appears in human transmissions from just before they went silent. They spoke of building something that would protect them from the galaxy. And then they stopped speaking entirely. The Long Watch, Velith repeated. The words felt heavy on her tongue. I tried to warn the council months ago. They would not listen. They called it speculation. Cale looked at her with desperate eyes. Ambassador, if I am right, the Drath fleet is sailing into something they do not understand. Something that has been waiting for 14,000 years. Velith thought of Lord Kryn's cruel smile. She thought of 200 Drath warships heading toward a quiet blue planet. She thought of 7 billion humans who had been silent for longer than most civilizations had existed. We need to warn them, she said. The Drath will not listen. Then we watch, and we wait. Velith placed her hand on Cale's shoulder. If you are right, we will know soon enough. If you are wrong, then Earth will fall. And there was nothing we could do anyway. It was not a comforting thought, but it was the truth. 3 weeks later, the Drath colonization fleet entered the Sol system. 200 warships, each one capable of destroying a city in seconds. They were led by Admiral Vorn, a veteran of 30 campaigns who had never known defeat. From the bridge of his flagship, the Conquest's Pride, Vorn looked at the blue planet growing larger on his display. Such a peaceful world. Such easy prey. Report, he commanded. Scans complete. Admiral, his sensor officer sounded confused. 7 billion life forms confirmed on the surface, but still no technology detected. No satellites. No stations. No ships. It is as if they are living in their own past. Vorn laughed. Primitives hiding from the stars. They were wise to hide. But hiding will not save them now. Admiral, should we attempt communication before landing? Why? Vorn leaned back in his command chair. They have nothing we want except their planet, and they cannot stop us from taking it. Begin landing preparations. I want troops on the ground within the hour. The fleet moved forward, past the outer planets, past a belt of asteroids, past a large red planet. Everything was silent. Everything was peaceful. Then they passed the 5th planet, a massive ball of swirling gas, and the silence ended. Admiral, the sensor officer's voice cracked with sudden fear. Contact, multiple contacts, coming from everywhere. Vorn sat up straight. Explain. The asteroids, sir. They are not asteroids. They are. The officer stopped, unable to speak. Vorn looked at his display and felt his blood turn to ice. The asteroid belt was moving. Hundreds of objects that had looked like rocks were now unfolding, revealing themselves to be ships, but not just any ships. These were vessels kilometers long, covered in strange symbols, built from materials his sensors could not identify. More ships emerged from beneath the ice of a frozen moon. More rose from the dark side of Earth's own moon. More appeared from the rings of the gas giant they had just passed. In less than a minute, the Drath fleet of 200 ships was surrounded by over 10,000 vessels that had been hiding in plain sight for 14,000 years. Admiral, the communications officer said, his voice barely a whisper. "We are receiving a transmission. Put it through." A voice filled the bridge. It was calm, patient, and spoke perfect Drath. "You are entering protected space. State your intentions." Vorn stared at the impossible fleet surrounding him. His hands trembled. But he was Drath, and the Drath did not show fear. "This is Admiral Vorn of the Drath hegemony. This system has been claimed by our empire. You will surrender immediately or be destroyed." There was a long pause. Then the voice spoke again, and Vorn could hear something that might have been sadness in its tone. "Acknowledged. Departure window, 6 hours." Admiral Vorn stood on the bridge of the Conquest's Pride, watching the countdown timer on his display. 5 hours and 47 minutes remained. 5 hours and 47 minutes until the human deadline expired. Around him, his officers worked in tense silence. They were monitoring the enemy fleet, trying to make sense of what they were seeing. But the more they studied these ancient ships, the less they understood. "Admiral," his science officer said quietly, "I have completed my analysis of the enemy vessels." "Report." "Sir, I cannot explain what I am seeing." The officer's hands shook as she pulled up her data. "These ships are made from materials that do not exist in our databases. Their power signatures suggest energy sources far beyond anything we have encountered. And their weapons. What about their weapons? They are not powered, Admiral. They are dormant. But the energy potential I am detecting." She paused, searching for words. "If these readings are correct, a single one of these ships could destroy our entire fleet in seconds." Vorn felt his jaw tighten. "That is impossible. 14,000 years, sir." The officer looked at him with fear in her eyes. "They have had 14,000 years to develop technology. We have no idea what they have built in that time." Vorn turned to his communications officer. "Open a channel to Drath Command. Priority 1. Sir, we are too far from relay stations. Any message will take weeks to reach the hegemony. Then we are alone." Vorn looked at the human fleet on his display. 10,000 ships against his 200. And each of those ships was larger and more powerful than anything he had ever seen. "We are alone, and we are surrounded." One of his junior officers stepped forward. He was young, eager, and had never seen real combat. "Admiral, we should attack now, while they are still powering up. If we strike first, we die." Vorn cut him off. "We would die before we fired a second shot. Look at them. They are not afraid of us. They gave us 6 hours not because they need time to prepare. They gave us 6 hours because they expect us to leave. Then we leave," the science officer said. "We report back to the hegemony. We return with a larger fleet." "A larger fleet?" Vorn laughed bitterly. "How large? 1,000 ships? 10,000? Look at what they have built in 14,000 years of silence. They were waiting for us. They were preparing for exactly this moment. And we walked right into their trap." The bridge fell silent. Every officer understood the truth. The Drath hegemony had built its empire by being the strongest force in every battle. They had never faced an enemy like this. They had never even imagined an enemy like this. "Admiral," the communications officer said, "I am receiving another transmission from the human fleet. Put it through." The same calm voice filled the bridge. "Admiral Vorn, you have 4 hours remaining. We detect that your fleet has not begun departure procedures. We strongly encourage you to reconsider your position." Vorn stepped forward. "Who are you? Who am I speaking to?" "I am Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. I have been waiting for this conversation for a very long time." "How long?" "Personally, 843 years." The voice carried a hint of amusement. "My species has been waiting for 14,000. Vorn felt dizzy. 843 years. No being lived that long. No being except. "You have found immortality," he whispered. "We have found many things, Admiral. Time is a wonderful teacher for those patient enough to listen." Admiral Chen's voice grew more serious. "We watched your galaxy for centuries before we went silent. We saw the endless wars, the conquered species, the empires rising and falling in blood. We decided we wanted no part of it, so you hid like cowards. We prepared like survivors. There's a difference." Chen paused. "Admiral, I am going to share something with you. Something that may help you make the right decision." The main display on Vorn's bridge flickered. Suddenly, he was not looking at the human fleet. He was looking at the past. The images showed Earth as it had been 14,000 years ago. A world of nations and conflicts, yes, but also a world of dreamers. He saw humans building rockets, reaching for the stars, sending messages into the void. They had been so young then, so hopeful. Then the images changed. They showed the humans receiving a response to their messages. They showed the humans learning that the galaxy was vast and ancient and violent. They showed the humans watching recordings of wars that had destroyed entire civilizations. We saw what was out there, Chen said as the images continued. We saw the Drath, the Sonari, the Hollow Worlders, all of them. We saw empires that considered young species to be resources, not people. And we made a choice. The images showed humans building, not on Earth, but in the dark spaces between worlds. They built in secret, hiding their work in asteroids and moons and the empty void. They built for generations, each one adding to the work of those who came before. We built our fleet in silence. We developed our technology in secret. And then we waited. Chen's voice was neither proud nor ashamed. It was simply matter of fact. We knew that one day, someone would come. We knew we would have to be ready. Ready for what? Vorn demanded. Ready to fight the entire galaxy? Ready to protect our home? Nothing more, nothing less. The display returned to the present. Vorn looked at the human fleet surrounding him. He looked at ships that had been built over millennia by a species that had chosen patience over violence. You could have conquered the galaxy, he said slowly. With this fleet, you could have taken everything. Yes, Chen agreed. We could have. We chose not to. We do not want your empire, Admiral Vorn. We do not want your worlds or your resources or your people. We only want to be left alone. And if we come back with a larger fleet, you will not. How can you be so certain? Because you are going to return to your hegemony and tell them what you have seen. You are going to tell them that Earth is not a primitive world to be conquered. You are going to tell them that humanity has been waiting in the dark for 14,000 years. And we are very, very good at waiting. Vorn wanted to argue. He wanted to threaten. He wanted to do something that would restore his pride. But he looked at those ancient ships, at the power readings that defied explanation. And he knew that Admiral Chen was right. What guarantee do we have? He asked. What guarantee that you will not use this fleet to attack us? None. Chen's voice softened. You have only our word. For 14,000 years, we have built weapons we hope to never use. We do not want war, Admiral. We never have. But if war comes to us, we will end it. Quickly, cleanly, and permanently. That is not a threat. It is a promise. Vorn closed his eyes. He had served the hegemony his entire life. He had conquered worlds, destroyed fleets, burned cities. He had believed that strength was the only truth in the universe. But now he stood before a species that had a different kind of strength. A strength born not of violence, but of patience. A strength that had waited in silence while empires rose and fell, building quietly in the dark, preparing for the day when they would have to defend themselves. It was terrifying. And it was, he admitted to himself, admirable. Fleet Command, Vorn said, turning to his officers. Begin departure procedures, Admiral. The young officer who had suggested attacking stared at him in shock. We are leaving? We are leaving. Vorn looked at the human fleet one last time. We are going home to deliver a message. Earth is not for us. It never was. The Drath fleet began to turn. Slowly, carefully, they moved away from Earth, away from the ancient armada that surrounded them. No one fired. No one threatened. The humans simply watched them go. As the Conquest's pride passed the edge of the Sol system, Vorn received one final transmission. Thank you, Admiral, Chen said. I hope we meet again under better circumstances. As do I, Vorn replied, surprising himself with his sincerity. May your silence continue in peace, and may your wars bring you whatever you seek. The transmission ended. The Drath fleet jumped to faster-than-light speeds, leaving the Sol system behind. In the Great Hall of the Concord of 12, Ambassador Velith received a report of the Drath withdrawal. She read it 3 times, unable to believe what she was seeing. The mighty Drath, conquerors of 30 systems, had retreated without firing a shot. Beside her, Kale was practically vibrating with excitement. I told you, he whispered. I told you they were waiting. You did. Velith looked at the report again. 10,000 ships, 14,000 years of preparation. A species that had chosen silence over violence, patience over war. But this is just the beginning. Kale, the galaxy knows about Earth now. Everyone knows. What do you think will happen? Velith thought about it carefully. She thought about the empires that ruled the galaxy, the wars that never ended, the fear that drove so many species to violence. And she thought about humanity, waiting in the dark, hoping they would never have to fight. I think, she said slowly, that everything is about to change. She was right. 3 days later, a message arrived at the Concord of 12. It was addressed to Ambassador Velith specifically. The sender was listed as Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. It contained only 4 words, "We should talk soon." Velith read those words and felt something she had not felt in centuries, hope. Somewhere in the dark between stars, humanity had been waiting. And now, finally, they were ready to speak again. Ambassador Velith had seen many wonders in her for 100 years of life. She had walked on crystal worlds where the ground sang beneath her feet. She had swum through the gas seas of the hollow worlds. She had stood before the throne of endless night, where the oldest beings in the galaxy held court. None of it had prepared her for Earth. The human vessel that had brought her diplomatic team was unlike any ship she had traveled on. It was old beyond belief, built 14,000 years ago. But it moved through space as smoothly as water flowing downhill. The walls were made of a material that felt warm to the touch. The lights adjusted themselves to match the comfort levels of each species aboard. Everything about the ship felt considered, careful, patient, just like the humans themselves. Now Velith stood at a viewing window, looking down at the planet that had remained silent for so long. Earth was beautiful. Green continents spread across its surface, broken by vast blue oceans. White clouds drifted lazily across its face. She could see no cities, no structures, no sign of the technology that she knew existed somewhere below. They hide it well, said Kale, standing beside her. He had insisted on joining the delegation, and Velith had not had the heart to refuse him. This moment was his dream coming true. They hide everything well, Velith replied. That is what they do. A door opened behind them, and a human officer entered. She was young by human standards, perhaps 40 years old, with dark hair and kind eyes. Her uniform bore the symbol of the Earth Defense Fleet, a simple image of their planet surrounded by stars. Ambassador Velith, we are beginning our descent. Admiral Chen asks if you would prefer to land at the primary reception center, or somewhere more private. Velith considered the question. What would you recommend? The officer smiled. The Admiral thought you might want to see the Gardens of Remembrance first. It is where we honor those who built the fleet. It is also very beautiful this time of year. Then we will go there. The descent took only minutes. The ship passed through clouds and emerged above a landscape that took Velith's breath away. Rolling hills covered in flowers stretched to the horizon. Trees older than most civilizations stood like gentle giants. A river wound through the valley, catching the sunlight and turning it into diamonds. There were no buildings, no roads, no sign of technology at all. Where are your cities? Kale asked, his voice full of wonder. Underground, mostly, the officer replied. We decided long ago that Earth was too beautiful to cover with structures, so we built down instead of up. Easier to hide that way, too. The ship landed softly in a meadow. When the doors opened, Velith smelled something she had never experienced before. Clean air. Air that had never been processed through machines or filtered through systems. Air that simply existed, as it had for billions of years. A figure was waiting for them. She was tall for a human, with silver hair that fell past her shoulders and eyes that held centuries of memories. She wore a simple white uniform with no decorations except for a small pin in the shape of a star. Welcome to Earth, Admiral Chen said. I am glad you accepted my invitation. Velith stepped forward and performed the Sonari gesture of respect. Thank you for inviting us. I must admit, this is not what I expected. No. Chen smiled. What did you expect? A fortress, weapons, soldiers everywhere. You have the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. I expected you to show it off. We do not show off our fleet because we are not proud of it. Chen turned and began walking toward a path that wound through the meadow. "Follow me, please. I want to show you something." They walked for several minutes, surrounded by beauty. Birds sang in the trees. Small animals watched them from the grass. The sun was warm, and a gentle breeze carried the scent of flowers. "This is what we are proud of," Chen said, gesturing at the landscape around them. "This is what we spent 14,000 years protecting. Not the ships, not the weapons. This, our home, our world, the life we have built here." They crested a small hill, and Velith saw the Gardens of Remembrance for the first time. It was a vast field of monuments, each one a different size and shape, each one made from a different material. Some were as tall as buildings, others were small enough to hold in your hand. There were millions of them, stretching as far as the eye could see. "What is this place?" Kale whispered. "This is where we remember our ancestors," Shen replied. Her voice had grown soft. "Every person who worked on the Long Watch has a monument here. Every scientist, engineer, builder, and dreamer who contributed to our fleet. Every mother who raised children knowing they would never see the work completed. Every father who taught his sons and daughters to continue what he had started." Velith looked at the countless monuments. Millions of lives, millions of stories, all dedicated to one goal, pursued across hundreds of generations. "You truly did this for 14,000 years, she said. "I did not fully believe it until now. We had to." Chen stopped before a simple stone marker. "This was my grandmother. She was one of the first admirals of the defense fleet, back when we only had 100 ships. She trained me. She told me that one day the silence would end, and we would have to be ready. And now the silence has ended." "Yes." Chen turned to face Velith directly. "That is why I invited you here, Ambassador. Because the silence has ended, and we must decide what comes next." They continued walking, deeper into the gardens. Chen led them to a building that seemed to grow out of the hillside, its walls made of the same living material as the ship that had brought them. Inside, a council chamber waited. 12 humans sat at a curved table, representing different regions of Earth. They rose when Chen entered, and she gestured for them to be seated. "Ambassador Velith, these are the Council of Voices. They speak for all of humanity. They have asked to meet you." Velith and Kale took seats across from the council. For a moment, no one spoke. Then an elderly man with dark skin and gentle eyes leaned forward. "Ambassador, we have watched your Concord of 12 for a very long time. We have seen its strengths and its failures. We have seen species join it and leave it. We have seen wars fought in its name and peace treaties broken. We know more about your galaxy than you might imagine." "Then you know why I am here," Velith said. "The draft will not forgive this humiliation. Other empires will test you. The galaxy will not simply let you remain in silence now that they know you exist. We know." Another council member spoke, a woman with white hair and sharp eyes. "That is why we chose to reveal ourselves when we did. We could not hide forever. Eventually, someone would have stumbled upon us by accident, and we would have had no control over how that encounter went. By confronting the draft on our terms, we sent a message that we are not prey." Admiral Chen sat down beside the council. "We do not want war. We never have. But we will not be victims either." The galaxy needed to understand that. Velith thought about this carefully. "So what do you want? If not war, if not silence, what?" The council exchanged glances. Then the elderly man spoke again. "We want peace, Ambassador. Real peace, not the false kind that exists between wars. We want trade and communication and cooperation. We want to learn from other species and share what we have learned." He paused. "But we also want to protect those who cannot protect themselves. Protect." Admiral Chen pulled up a holographic display. It showed a map of the galaxy with certain areas marked in red. "These are the species the draft have conquered in the last century. These are the worlds they have stripped of resources. These are the populations they have enslaved or destroyed." Chen's voice hardened. "We watched all of this happen. We had the power to stop it, but we stayed silent because we were not ready, because we were afraid. And now?" Velith asked. "Now we are ready, and we are no longer afraid." Kale spoke up for the first time. "You want to challenge the draft? They are the most powerful military force in the Concord. We do not want to challenge anyone. Chen shook her head. We want to offer an alternative. A coalition of species that believes in protection rather than conquest. A group that will stand together against those who would prey on the weak. And if the Drath refuse to accept this, if they attack you, Chen's expression did not change. Then we will do what we have spent 14,000 years preparing to do. We will defend ourselves and those who stand with us, not with conquest, but with strength. The kind of strength that says enough is enough. Velith looked at the humans around her. She saw no arrogance in their eyes, no hunger for power. She saw only determination. The determination of a species that had hidden in the dark for millennia, building and preparing, hoping they would never have to fight, but knowing they might have to someday. The Sonari are not warriors, she said slowly. We cannot offer you soldiers. We do not need soldiers. Chen smiled. We need diplomats, advisors, historians, people who understand the galaxy and can help us navigate it. People like you, Ambassador. People like young Kale here. Kale blushed deeply at being mentioned. This is a great risk, Velith said. If we ally ourselves with you and you fail, then we fail together. Chen extended her hand in the human gesture of agreement. But we will not fail, Ambassador. We have. 6 months had passed since humanity broke its silence. In that time, the galaxy had changed in ways no one had predicted. The coalition that Admiral Chen had proposed had grown beyond anyone's expectations. The Sonari were the first to join, followed quickly by a dozen smaller species who had lived in fear of the Drath for centuries. Then came the Hollow Worlders, ancient and wise, who saw in humanity something they had not seen in millennia, a reason to hope. But not everyone welcomed humanity's return. The Drath hegemony had retreated to their core worlds, building their forces, preparing for a war they believed was inevitable. Other powers watched and waited, unsure which side to choose. And somewhere in the darkness beyond the galaxy's edge, something else was watching too. Admiral Chen stood in the command center of Sentinel Station, humanity's largest military outpost, built in secret over 8,000 years. It was a massive structure hidden in the asteroid belt of Sol System. Thousands of officers worked at their stations, monitoring the galaxy, tracking threats, coordinating with coalition allies. Today, they were tracking something new. The signals are getting stronger, said Commander Yuki, Chen's second-in-command. She was pointing at a display showing the edge of known space. Whatever is out there, it is getting closer. Chen studied the readings. They had first detected these signals 3 weeks ago. Strange patterns that made no sense. Energy signatures that defied physics. Something was approaching from beyond the galactic rim, from the vast emptiness between galaxies where nothing was supposed to exist. How long until it reaches inhabited space? Chen asked. At current speed, 6 months. Maybe less. Chen nodded slowly. This was what her ancestors had feared. This was why they had truly built the fleet. Get me a channel to Ambassador Velith, she said, and prepare a full briefing for the Council of Voices. We need to tell them everything, an hour later. Chen stood before a gathering of the coalition's leaders. Velith was there, along with representatives from every allied species. The Hollow Worlder delegate, a being of living stone named Grand, was so large he had to attend via hologram. For 14,000 years, we told the galaxy that we were hiding from you, Chen began. That was true, but it was not the whole truth. We were also hiding from something else, something we detected 8,000 years ago. When our long-range sensors finally reached beyond the galaxy's edge, the display behind her changed, showing images that made several delegates gasp in fear. They were ships, but not like any ships anyone had seen before. They were organic, twisted, wrong. They seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved through space in patterns that hurt the mind to watch. We call them the Void Singers, Chen continued. We do not know what they call themselves. We do not know if they have language at all. What we do know is that they have destroyed countless civilizations in countless galaxies. They consume everything in their path, worlds, species, stars, everything. Why have we never heard of them? Asked a delegate from the Trade Federation. Because no one survives to tell the tale. We only know about them because we spent millennia building sensors powerful enough to detect them. From across the intergalactic void, we watched them destroy other galaxies. We calculated their trajectory, and we realized they were coming here. The room fell silent. Every being present understood what Chen was saying. This was not a threat like the Drath. This was not a war that could be won through strength or diplomacy. This was extinction. How long have you known? Velith asked quietly. 8,000 years. Chen's voice was heavy with guilt. We watched them approach for 8,000 years, building our fleet, preparing our weapons, knowing that one day they would arrive. And we said nothing. We hid in silence while the galaxy fought its petty wars, knowing that none of it would matter when the Void Singers came. Why did you not warn us? Would you have believed us? Chen shook her head. Would anyone have believed a species they considered primitive, warning them about monsters from beyond the stars? No, you would have dismissed us as fools or liars. You might have tried to take our technology by force. Either way, we would have lost our ability to prepare. Gron's stone voice rumbled through the chamber. And now, are you prepared? We have weapons that can hurt them, perhaps even destroy them. But we do not know if it will be enough. They have never faced anything like what we have built. Then again, we have never faced anything like them. Chen looked at each delegate in turn. That is why I am telling you now. Because in 6 months, the Void Singers will reach this galaxy, and we will need every ship, every weapon, every mind working together if we are to survive. The debate that followed lasted for hours. Some delegates wanted to flee, to gather their people and run as far as possible. Others wanted to fight, to throw everything they had at the approaching enemy. A few accused humanity of lying, of inventing this threat to justify their massive fleet. But in the end, they all looked at the images of the Void Singers, at the dead galaxies they had left behind, and they understood the truth. What do you need from us? Velith asked when the arguing finally stopped. Everything. Chen pulled up a strategic display. The Void Singers will not negotiate. They will not accept surrender. They will simply consume. Our only chance is to meet them at the galactic edge, away from populated worlds, and hit them with everything we have. And if that fails, then we fall back. We fight again. We keep fighting until there is nothing left to fight with. Chen's expression hardened. But I do not intend to fail, Ambassador. My ancestors built this fleet over 14,000 years. They sacrificed everything so that humanity would have a chance when this day came. I will not waste that sacrifice. The coalition agreed to mobilize. Every species that could contribute ships sent them to a gathering point at the edge of known space. The Drath hegemony, still bitter over their humiliation, refused to participate. They declared that they would defend their own territory and let the rest of the galaxy burn. It was a decision they would come to regret. 3 months later, the Void Singers arrived. They did not come to the galactic edge, where the coalition fleet was waiting. They bypassed it entirely, slipping through gaps in the sensor network, moving faster than anyone had predicted. They appeared in the heart of Drath space without warning. Chen was in her command chair when the reports came in. Her face went pale. "Show me," she said. The display changed to show the Drath home system. A fleet of 1,000 warships had been stationed there. The pride of the hegemony, the greatest military force in the galaxy, other than humanity's own. The Void Singers went through them like fire through paper. Chen watched in horror as Drath ships exploded one after another. Their weapons did nothing. Their shields failed instantly. In less than 10 minutes, 1,000 warships were reduced to dust. Then the Void Singers turned toward the Drath homeworld. "No," Chen whispered. "Not like this." She thought of Admiral Vorn, who had retreated rather than fight at Seoul. She thought of the Drath people, billions of them, who had nothing to do with their empire's cruelty. She thought of children who would die because their leaders had been too proud to ask for help. "Set course for Drath space," she ordered. "Maximum speed. Admiral, the coalition fleet will follow when they can. We cannot wait." Chen stood up. "The Drath may hate us. They may have refused to join our coalition, but they are still people, and we do not let people die if we can save them." The human fleet jumped to faster-than-light speeds. Thousands of ancient ships, built over millennia, racing to save an enemy. They arrived too late to save the Drath fleet, but they arrived in time to save the planet. Chen watched as her ships emerged from faster-than-light travel, forming a wall between the Void Singers and the Drath homeworld. The enemy fleet was larger than she had expected. 100 twisted vessels, each one radiating wrongness. "All ships, engage," she commanded. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Human weapons, developed over 14,000 years, struck the Void Singers with devastating effect, but the Void Singers struck back just as hard. Ships on both sides exploded, the space between them filled with fire and death. Chen fought from her command chair, directing her forces, watching her people die. Hours passed. The Void Singers kept coming. For every one destroyed, two more seemed to take its place. "Admiral," Commander Yuki reported, "we have lost 30% of our fleet. The Void Singers are adapting to our weapons. We cannot maintain this pace." Chen closed her eyes. She thought of her grandmother's monument in the Gardens of Remembrance. She thought of the 14,000 years of preparation that had led to this moment. "Then we need to try something different," she said. "Open a channel. Maximum power. Broadcast on all frequencies." A channel to whom? To them, to the Void Singers. Chen stood up. For millions of years, every civilization they have encountered has either fled or fought. No one has ever tried to talk to them. Maybe it is time someone did. Her officers stared at her as if she had lost her mind, but they obeyed. Chen took a deep breath. Then she spoke. "My name is Admiral Chen of the Earth Defense Fleet. I am speaking to the beings we call the Void Singers. I do not know if you understand language. I do not know if you care. But I am asking you to stop. I am asking you to listen." The battle continued for a muff voice of the Void Singers filled Admiral Chen's command center. It was a sound that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. It was cold and ancient and terribly, terribly lonely. "We hear you," the voice repeated. "Speak again. Let us remember what words sound like." Chen gripped the edge of her command chair. Her fleet hung motionless in space, weapons ready. The Void Singers had stopped their attack, but she knew that could change in an instant. "We will speak," she said carefully. "But first, I need to understand. Why do you destroy galaxies, civilizations, entire species? Why?" There was a long pause. When the voice came again, it carried something that sounded almost like confusion. "Destroy? We do not understand this word as you use it. We consume, we absorb, we make things part of us. Is this not what all living things do?" Chen thought about this. To the Void Singers, eating and destroying might be the same thing. They had been doing this for so long, across so many galaxies, that they had forgotten the difference. Living things need to eat. "Yes," she said, "but they do not need to consume everything. They can stop. They can share. They can exist alongside others." "Others?" The voice sounded curious now. "There are no others. There is only us. Everything else becomes us eventually." "That is not true." Chen stepped forward, even though there was nothing to step toward. "We are here. We are not part of you. We are different. We are other." Another long pause. The Void Singers seemed to be thinking, processing this strange idea. "You spoke to us," the voice said finally. "In eternal ages of traveling through the void between galaxies, no one has ever spoken to us. They run, they fight, they die, they become part of us. But they never speak, because they were afraid. Are you not afraid?" Chen smiled slightly. "I am terrified. But fear does not have to mean silence. Fear can also mean courage. The courage to try something different. The courage to reach out instead of pushing away." The Void Singers made a sound that might have been laughter or might have been crying. It was impossible to tell. "You are strange beings, small and brief and fragile. We have consumed species 1,000,000 times your age. We have absorbed civilizations that burned brighter than stars. And yet you speak to us. You ask us questions. You treat us as if we are people. Are you not?" The question hung in the silence. Chen could feel her officers watching her, barely breathing. She could feel the weight of 14,000 years pressing down on her shoulders. "We do not know," the voice admitted. "It has been so long since anyone asked. It has been so long since we thought about what we are, rather than what we do." Chen took a deep breath. This was the moment. This was why her ancestors had spent millennia building ships that could fight gods. Not to destroy them, but to earn the right to speak to them. "I would like to know what you are," she said. "I would like to understand. But I cannot do that while you are consuming the beings I have sworn to protect. Can you stop, even temporarily? Can you give us time to learn about each other?" The Void Singers were silent for a long moment. Their ships hung motionless, twisted shapes against the stars. On the Drath homeworld below, billions of people waited to see if they would live or die. "Time," the voice said slowly. "We have so much time. We have consumed it along with everything else. But we have never shared it. Would you like to try?" Another pause. Then, slowly, the Void Singer ships began to move. But not toward the planet, not toward the human fleet. They moved backward, away from the battle, away from the galaxy they had come to consume. "We will try," the voice said. "We will wait at the edge of your galaxy. We will think about your words. We will remember what it was like to be spoken to. And you will not consume anyone while you think. We will try not to. It has been so long since we stopped. We are not sure we remember how." The voice carried something that sounded almost like sadness. "We are very old, small beings, and very lonely. We had forgotten that there was another way." The Void Singer fleet disappeared into the darkness between stars. They did not attack. They did not consume. They simply left, carrying with them questions they had not asked in millions of years. Chen collapsed into her command chair. Her hands were shaking. "Admiral," Commander Yuki said softly, "did that really just happen? Did we just talk monsters out of destroying the galaxy?" "We talked to them," Chen replied. "We reminded them that they are more than what they do. Whether that saves the galaxy remains to be seen." She looked at the Drath homeworld on her display. Billions of lives, saved not by weapons or war, but by words, by the simple act of treating monsters as people. It was, she thought, the most human thing they could have done. 1 year later, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The Void Singers remained at the galactic edge, true to their word. They did not consume. They did not destroy. Instead, they sent representatives to meet with human scientists, philosophers, and artists. They wanted to understand what they had lost over millions of years of endless consumption. They wanted to remember what it meant to be something other than hunger. The Drath hegemony had collapsed. After watching humanity save their homeworld, after seeing the Void Singers retreat without conquering, the Drath people had risen up against their military rulers. They wanted a new way. They wanted to be part of the coalition that had offered them protection. When their own leaders had abandoned them, the Concord of 12 no longer existed. In its place, a new alliance had formed. They called it the Council of Voices, named after the human governing body that had waited 14,000 years for this moment. And at the center of it all was Earth, no longer hidden, no longer silent. Humans walked on alien worlds. Alien scholars walked in the gardens of remembrance. Children from 100 species learned together, played together, dreamed together. Admiral Chen stood in her garden on Earth, looking up at the stars. She was over 900 years old now, ancient even by the standards of human immortality. She had seen so much, done so much, waited so long. Ambassador Velith approached her, moving slowly through the flowers. The Sonari diplomat had become Chen's closest friend over the past year. They had built something amazing together. "You look thoughtful," Velith said. "I am remembering." Chen smiled. 14,000 years. That is how long my ancestors prepared for this moment. Generation after generation, building ships they hoped they would never use, waiting for a future they would never see. And now the waiting is over. Now we get to live in the world they dreamed of. Velith looked up at the stars. "Do you think it will last? The peace, I mean. The Void Singers, the coalition, all of it?" "I do not know," Chen admitted. "Nothing lasts forever. But that does not mean it is not worth building. My ancestors knew they would never see this day. They built anyway. They hoped anyway. That is what humans do. That is what makes you remarkable." Chen shook her head. "That is what makes us human. We are small and brief and fragile, just like the Void Singers said. But we never stop trying. We never stop hoping. Even when we are afraid. Even when we are alone. Even when 14,000 years stretch between us and our dreams." She reached out and took Velith's hand. A human and a Sonari, standing together on a world that had hidden in silence for longer than most civilizations had existed. "The silence is over," Chen said softly. "The waiting is done. Now comes the hard part. What is the hard part? Chen smiled. Living, building, making the universe a little better than we found it. That is the hard part, but it is also the beautiful part. Above them, the stars shone bright and clear. Somewhere out there, the void singers were learning to be something other than hunger. Somewhere out there, species that had been enemies were becoming friends. Somewhere out there, a galaxy that had known only war was finally learning peace. And on Earth, in a garden that had bloomed for 14,000 years, humanity looked up at the stars and smiled. They had been silent for so long, but now they had so much to say. And the universe, for the first time in forever, was listening.